What if the woman the world worshipped as a symbol of desire was, in truth, someone who spent her entire life trying to escape the very image that made her famous? Before you judge her, stay with me until the end of this video, because the Brigitte Bardot you think you know is only a shadow of the real woman behind the photographs. Today, we will reveal the rare images, forbidden moments, and buried confessions that shaped a life both breathtakingly glamorous and unbearably tragic, a life the world never truly understood. Brigitte Bardot's childhood looked, from the outside, like a delicately painted postcard from Paris. A prestigious apartment in the 16th arrondissement, parents who valued culture and refinement, and a future seemingly carved from elegance. Yet behind the embroidered curtains and polished parquet floors, little Brigitte lived under rules so rigid they felt like invisible chains. Her father demanded perfection, posture, manners, obedience, while her mother curated every detail of her existence, from the friends she was allowed to see to the clothes she was permitted to wear. Their home was warm in appearance, but cold in spirit, a place where tenderness was scarce and expectations suffocating. The world outside offered no comfort either. Paris was trembling under the boots of occupying forces during World War II, and the city's children grew up listening not to laughter but to sirens and whispered fears. Brigitte spent her formative years shut indoors, away from danger, yet equally distant from childhood itself. With no friends to share secrets with and no freedom to run through the streets, she found solace in the rhythm of records, spinning with the grace of a girl trying to dance her way out of loneliness. Ballet became the first language through which she learned to breathe. She entered the Conservatoire de Paris, a sanctuary where discipline fused with passion. In ballet, she discovered the first softness of her life movement that did not punish, beauty that came from her own body rather than her parents' expectations. But even this world eventually grew too small to contain her. Her beauty, luminous and effortless, began to draw attention from photographers who saw something in her she didn't yet understand, a potential that could ignite a new era of cinema. At just 15, her face appeared on the cover of Elle magazine, a moment that marked the quiet beginning of her escape, even as she remained unaware of the storm such exposure would bring. Her parents considered acting improper, a dangerous world unfit for a young woman of their class. But the machinery of fame had already begun turning, and Brigitte, the girl who had spent her childhood trying to be perfect, was suddenly seen for something she had never tried to be: irresistible. What she did not know then was that the same beauty that opened doors would one day imprison her more deeply than any parental rule ever could. Brigitte's entrance into cinema was not marked by triumph, but by resistance. Her parents refused to let her audition for films, believing the industry to be morally corrupt. Yet fate rarely asks permission. At 16, she met Roger Vadim, a young assistant director whose gaze seemed to understand her in ways no one else ever had. He saw not just a beautiful girl but a spark, a restless energy hidden behind shy smiles and lowered eyes. Brigitte later described him as a wild wolf, someone both terrifying and irresistible, a man who awakened a longing she had never dared to name. Their connection ignited instantly, a dangerous mixture of innocence and experience. To Vadim, Brigitte was a muse. To Brigitte, he was the first person who made her feel seen. But to her parents, he was a threat. When they discovered the affair, fury erupted. Brigitte was forbidden from seeing him and threatened with exile to England if she disobeyed. The cage around her childhood tightened once more, this time reinforced not with rules, but with heartbreak. Separation pushed her into a darkness few knew existed. The girl who once danced through loneliness now found herself battling despair. In a moment of devastation, she attempted to end her life by lighting a fire in the fireplace, intending to fall asleep inside the smoke. Her family intervened just in time, shaken by the depth of her suffering. Realizing they could not control her heart without destroying her entirely, they relented, but under one condition. When she turned 18, she must marry Vadim. And so, she did. The union between the strict family's obedient daughter and the rebellious filmmaker became the first major turning point of her life. It transformed her from a protected girl into a woman thrust into the arms of passion, publicity, and scandal, long before she understood the price of any of it. Vadim, enamored with her beauty, began shaping her image for the world. He placed her photographs in magazines, guided her into film auditions, and introduced her to the seductive yet treacherous world of French cinema. Brigitte, young and untrained, discovered that her presence alone drew attention like a magnet. Directors didn't need her to act, they needed her to exist, luminous, sensual, unrepeatable. But love, even passionate love, cannot bend forever under the weight of ambition, jealousy, and youth. A storm was brewing, waiting for the film that would turn her into a sensation and ruin the fragile marriage that had barely begun. By 1956, Brigitte Bardot had appeared in several films, but none hinted at the explosion that was coming. When Vadim directed And God Created Woman, with Brigitte as the sensual, untamed Juliet, he unleashed something France had never seen before. The film was not merely provocative, it was revolutionary. Brigitte's on-screen presence radiated a raw, effortless sexuality that challenged every societal norm. Her beauty was not polite, it was a force. The backlash was immediate. Several U.S. states banned the film, and critics called it indecent, immoral, and a danger to traditional values, yet audiences were mesmerized. Overnight, Brigitte became an international icon, the embodiment of liberated femininity, the woman who dared to exist on her own terms. But fame is a merciless sculptor. While the world adored her, her marriage with Vadim disintegrated under the weight of incessant rumors and infidelity on both sides. During filming, Brigitte fell deeply in love with her co-star Jean-Louis Trintignant. Their affair, impossible to conceal, brought her marriage to a quiet but inevitable end. Vadim, who had shaped her into a goddess, was now losing her to the very world he introduced her to. This was the moment Brigitte's image, the sex kitten, the rebel, the cinematic enchantress fused permanently with her identity. She didn't just act the part, she lived it, even when it tore pieces from her heart. Fame sharpened her into a symbol, but the woman beneath the symbol began to fracture. Her newfound liberation came with a cost, a growing loneliness she didn't yet know how to face. And instead of finding peace, Brigitte sought refuge in emotions too intense, relationships too chaotic, and desires too fleeting to heal anything for long. The world saw a goddess rising. Brigitte, however, felt herself falling. With her first marriage dissolved, Brigitte plunged into a series of romances that captivated tabloids and fascinated the public. Men of influence, talent, and wealth gravitated toward her like moths to a flame. She loved freely, openly, and recklessly, and she refused to apologize for any of it. She once said she had relationships with dozens of partners, men and women alike, during those turbulent years. To some, she was a symbol of liberation. To others, a threat to moral order. But to Brigitte, these affairs were attempts to fill a void she had carried since childhood. Her second marriage, to actor Jacques Charrier in 1959, marked a turning point, not of joy, but of tragedy. When she became pregnant, the world celebrated. Brigitte did not. The thought of motherhood terrified her. She felt too young, too unstable, too fragmented to care for another life. She described pregnancy as a prison, a moment in which she felt she was facing death. When her son Nicholas was born, she felt nothing. The newspapers saw a glamorous mother. Brigitte felt only panic. She struggled to hold him, avoided him, and confessed to friends that she didn't know how to be a mother. Her marriage collapsed within 3 years. The emotional fracture between Brigitte and her son grew deeper with time. When he reached adulthood, he read her memoir, where she described her unborn child as a cancerous tumor. The words were unforgivable. Nicholas sued her for emotional damage, and the court ruled in his favor. The settlement was significant, but its weight was nothing compared to the guilt Brigitte carried. Throughout these years, her affairs multiplied, each bringing passion but never permanence. Men adored her, worshipped her, envied each other for her attention, yet none provided the safety she longed for. Her beauty, the very force that lifted her to stardom, had become both her blessing and her curse. It brought her endless love stories, but no lasting love. The more adored she became, the more alone she felt. Among the dozens who dreamed of her, a few left indelible marks on her life, none more dramatic than Günter Sachs, the German millionaire whose flamboyant gestures seemed drawn from a Hollywood screenplay. Their romance was instant, explosive, and larger than life. Days after meeting, he sent a helicopter over her home to shower 1,000 roses from the sky, an act of devotion so extravagant it stunned even Brigitte. They married in Las Vegas after knowing each other for only 2 months. The world marveled at the glamorous union of two magnetic icons. Yet beneath the glittering surface, Brigitte's restlessness persisted. Within days of returning home, she began an affair with British entertainer Mike Sarney, repeating the cycle that had haunted all her relationships. Sachs had given her a fairy tale, but Brigitte had never been able to live in fairy tales. Their marriage ended after 3 years, though Sachs later confessed that a year with Brigitte was worth a decade with anyone else. Another profound connection emerged during her collaboration with Serge Gainsbourg, the enigmatic musician who composed some of his most intimate works for her, including Je t'aime, moi non plus. Their chemistry was unmistakable, their collaboration electric. Brigitte recorded breathy, sensual takes that captured the essence of their bond. Yet she later asked Serge not to release the version featuring her voice, a request he honored. When he recorded it again with Jane Birkin, the song became a global sensation. But in the private corners of history, the unreleased original remains a symbol of a love that flickered brightly but briefly. Through all these sweeping romances, Brigitte continued searching for something beyond passion, something steadier, gentler, more enduring. But passion was the only language she had ever known, and it rarely offered stability. The men she loved became chapters, each vibrant but unfinished. And though the world envied her for the intensity of her experiences, Brigitte often found herself longing for a stillness she had never been taught to seek. In 1992, long after the world had engraved her as an eternal symbol of beauty and rebellion, Brigitte Bardot entered the final and most unexpected chapter of her life. She married Bernard Dormal, a businessman whose quiet strength offered something none of her previous lovers could: stability. Their wedding was intimate, attended only by close friends, a stark contrast to the extravagant chaos of her earlier unions. Against all expectations, this marriage endured. With Bernard, Brigitte found something she had been denied since childhood: peace. She withdrew from cinema, abandoned red carpets, and turned her energy toward a cause that would redefine her legacy. After decades of being viewed as an object of desire, she refocused her life on defending those who had no voice, animals suffering in silence. Her activism was fierce, relentless, and deeply personal. She sold her jewelry, her belongings, almost everything she owned, to fund her foundation. In Saint-Tropez, far from the flash of cameras, Brigitte reinvented herself. The image of the sensual goddess gave way to a woman of compassion, a protector, a fighter. Her love for animals, unconditional and unbroken, became the first stable source of devotion in her life. The world had celebrated her for her beauty, judged her for her loves, and misunderstood her for her vulnerabilities. But time, as it often does, softened the narrative. The scandals faded, leaving behind a portrait far more intricate: a woman who survived fame, desire, heartbreak, motherhood, passion, and despair, and emerged with a soul still capable of immense love. Who would have imagined that the rebellious girl who once set cultural fires across continents would one day dedicate her life to tenderness? Brigitte Bardot did. And in this transformation lies the true story the world rarely tells. Behind the icon was a woman who spent her entire life searching for meaning, only to discover it not in the spotlight, but in the quiet refuge of empathy. If this deeper story of Brigitte Bardot moved you or changed the way you see her, stay with us, subscribe, and continue exploring the rare histories and untold truths behind the legends the world thought it already understood.